Welcome to Dark Hours. Tonight I'm sharing 4 true road trip horror stories that will make you think twice about your next late-night drive. Before we begin, let me know down in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I love seeing how far these stories travel. If I hadn't slammed my brakes that night on the causeway, I'd have killed her, and honestly, maybe I should have kept going. My name's Chris. I'm 34, work construction out of Tampa, and most nights I don't leave the city. Life is pretty simple. Job sites, traffic, a cold beer at the end of the week. But that month I'd picked up some side work with a buddy down on the Gulf, hauling tools and supplies out to a crew near Fort Myers. The hours were long, the pay wasn't worth the miles, and I hated night driving more than anything. Still, I told myself the extra cash would patch a few bills. That's how I ended up alone on the causeway just before midnight, wind tearing across the bay, black water on both sides, nothing but my headlights cutting a thin slice through the dark. And that's when it happened. I nearly killed her. 1 second the lane ahead was empty. The next, a woman was standing in the middle of the causeway, pale face frozen, arms raised like she didn't care if I ran her down. My brakes screamed, the wheel jerked, seatbelt crushed my chest, and I braced for the thud that never came. The car fishtailed, tires shrieking against concrete, and then we stopped, half-cocked across the lane, my heart hammering so loud I thought I'd black out. She didn't move, just stood there in the glow, blinking like the light burned. I cracked the window, air rushing in cold and salty, sharp with that marsh stink you can taste on the back of your tongue. "What are you doing?" I shouted. "You want to die out here?" Her lips trembled. "Please, my van, it died." I waved for 20 minutes. No one stopped. Behind her sat a blue van nosed into the guardrail, hazards pulsing like a weak heartbeat. The causeway is nothing but a concrete ribbon over water. No shoulder, no houses, just rail, drop, and miles of black nothing. Common sense screamed at me to keep driving. I know the rules. Don't stop on empty highways. Don't get out. Don't pick up strangers at night. But she looked like she'd collapse right there if I didn't. Against my better judgment, I put it in park and stepped out. The wind slapped me sideways. Up close, the van looked worse. Paint blistered, windows tinted black enough to be mirrors, no front plate. A reflector triangle sat half-blown across the lane. "You alone?" I asked, keeping my car between us. "Name's Chris." She hesitated like she had to choose an answer. "Becky," she said finally. "It's just me." I leaned into the open door of the van. Dead ignition. No phone cord, no bag except an ancient fast food wrapper, tires chewed up but intact, scrapes along the rail where she'd kissed it. And then I saw them. 2 faint pinpricks of light far down the causeway. Headlights moving too slow. Becky stiffened. "That's them," she whispered. "Who?" I asked, but my mouth was already dry. The lights crawled closer, and when they were 50 yards away, red and blue strobes sputtered to life. Cheap, jerky, wrong, not a roof bar, not the clean rhythm you feel in your spine. Someone's toy rig. Becky clutched her arms. "Get in!" "Please." I slid behind the wheel, hit the locks. She darted around and yanked open the passenger door, collapsing inside with a canvas tote clutched to her chest. The smell of cold air and perfume filled the cabin. Her hands shook as she buckled up. The unmarked car pulled alongside her van, idling, then rolled forward until it sat nose to nose with us, blocking the lane. 2 men inside, driver thick through the shoulders, passenger long-necked with a cap low. The passenger's window slid down. "You folks need help?" His voice was flat, rehearsed. His eyes lingered on Becky like a scanner beam. "We're fine," I said, casual as I could. "Tow's on the way." He smiled without smiling. "Strange. No service out here. Who'd you call?" The driver killed his engine, stepped out, badge crooked on his belt, no radio, no vest. He rapped his knuckles on my glass, leaned so close I could smell his aftershave. "Step out a second, sir." "No thanks," I said. "If you're legit, hit your roof bar and call in your unit number. I'll wait." Something flickered in his face. Annoyance, surprise. He lowered his voice. "Step out." Becky hissed. "Drive!" Nails dug crescents into her tote. I threw it in first and floored it. The tires shrieked, triangle reflector pinged under my chassis, and we shot forward. In the mirror their headlights swung, then snapped behind us, eating distance. "Seatbelt," I muttered stupidly. She was already strapped in. She braced against the dash, staring dead ahead. "Why you?" I asked, knuckles white. "What did you do?" "I saw something," she said. "That's all I can say. Please, just keep going." The causeway is straight until it isn't. Wind buffeted us sideways, rail flashing close. The fake cops surged, their bumper filling my rear view. They tapped me once, just enough to jolt. My chest went numb and hot. I dropped gears, engine howling. "Hold on," I barked. We blasted past mile marker 214. My eyes flicked to the green highway cameras mounted overhead, little domes always recording. I cut across the lane and stopped dead under one, hazards blazing. Their car swerved, braked hard. They idled 20 feet back, lights flickering. For 10 long seconds, nobody moved. Then they reversed slow, swung around, and melted into the dark. Gone like a bad dream. Becky sagged, whispering something I couldn't catch. I pulled away, slower this time, nerves fried. At the next gas station, sodium lights buzzing overhead, I parked. Becky stared at the doors, shoulders tight. "I can't go in," she said. "There are deputies inside," I told her. 2 cruisers sat at the pumps, real light bars glowing faintly. She shook her head hard. "You don't understand." She opened the door. The tote never left her arms. "Thank you, Chris." Before I could say a word, she walked into the dark behind the station and was gone. I sat there until a real deputy tapped my glass and asked if I was okay. I told him the short version, but not about Becky. He wrote notes, promised they'd look into it. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. Later, at home, I searched, found vague reports of fake troopers pulling people over near the bay. One article mentioned a missing woman, mid-30s, last seen driving a blue van. Name withheld. That was a year ago. I still see her sometimes, standing in the beam of my headlights, arms raised like she's daring me to hit her. And every time I cross that causeway, I glance up at those cameras, wondering if they caught what I did, or if it's just another story the water keeps. If I'd kept driving that night, I'd still think motels are just pit stops for weary travelers. Now I know some doors don't open to rest. They open to whatever's waiting on the other side. My name's Ryan. I'm 29, a freelance photographer scraping by on wedding gigs and product shoots, pouring whatever's left into gas and lenses. I was on a solo trek through the Southwest, chasing stormlight. Those massive anvil clouds that bruised the sky purple and cast golden rays across the desert. 10 hours on the road that day, from Monument Valley through reservation lands and pale scrub. The kind of drive that clears your mind until the final hour, when exhaustion creeps in like a passenger you didn't invite. My plan was simple. Push to the next town, crash at a chain motel, sleep 6 hours, and chase the sunrise again. I'd done it 100 times. Almost. The highway shrank to 2 lanes, then to a faded ribbon that looked like it was drawn in chalk. The desert at night isn't just dark, it's alive with sound. A low hum of cooling rocks, coyotes calling in the distance, my tires stitching a seam through the silence. The fuel gauge hovered 1 tick below a quarter. I told myself I'd stop at the next lit exit. 20 minutes later, none appeared. Then, around a bend, a flicker pierced the dark. Pink, neon stuttering against the sky, spelling out a broken promise. MOEL. A squat, lonely building sat at the end of a cracked asphalt loop, 6 doors, 3 downstairs, 3 up, and a single office with a window cluttered with faded postcards. A chain swayed on a dead gas pump out front. Nothing else stirred. I almost drove on. The sign felt wrong, its buzz carrying a menace you sense in your gut. But exhaustion makes deals daylight would reject. I turned in, tires grinding gravel. A lone car sat in the lot. A gold Buick, dented and dusted with desert grit, its driver's window cracked an inch, a brittle parking ticket tucked under the wiper. The office blinds hung half-closed. Inside, a bell rested on the counter next to a fan that stirred nothing. A corkboard behind the counter held rows of Polaroids, their colors bled out by time. People with arms around each other, a dog, a couple in matching sunglasses. Some had years scrawled in shaky ink. The latest I could read was 2011. 3 rings of the bell summoned a man from the back room, as if he'd been waiting there, pieced together for my arrival. Late 50s, thinning hair, white shirt too pristine for the dust-choked world outside. He looked at me like he knew me, or had been expecting me. "Evening," he said, his voice smooth as a late-night DJ on a cheap radio. "You want a room?" "Bed and a shower," I said, "one night." He opened a ledger the size of an old Bible, scratching in my name with a pen from a chain motel that wasn't this place. No ID, no card. He slid a key across the counter, its yellow plastic tag marked 6 in grease pencil. "Upstairs on the end," he said. "Best one." I glanced at the rack behind him. 3 keys. 1, 3, 6. "Looks like I've got choices," I said, forcing a smile. "Ground floor's easier with gear." He blinked once, slow. 6, he said, calm as a teacher correcting a child. "It's quiet." I took the key. The air felt like it might crack if I pushed back. As I turned, he added, "Ice machine's broken. You'll hear the wind, sounds like footsteps. Don't worry about it." His mouth twitched into half a smile. The bell chimed faintly as I opened the door. The metal stairs clanged, the middle step loose, slapping my foot like it wanted attention. Room 4's window was black. Room 5 leaked a sliver of light past its curtain. Room 6's bulb flickered once and held. The door was layered with paint, a geological record of neglect. The key stuck, then turned with a dry snap. Inside, the room smelled of stale air conditioning, old coins, and tap water, 2 double beds with bedspreads the color of a neglected pool. A table held a phone that didn't sit right in its cradle. A microwave bore a faded, out-of-order sticker. The TV's screen mirrored my tired face, smudged by bad cleaning. I dropped my camera backpack and Pelican case by the door and stood, listening. Some rooms tell you you're alone. This one told me to hush. I showered to anchor myself in routine, the hot water a small defiance. The mirror fogged, then cleared, showing a face I barely recognized. Tired eyes, scruffy beard, road dust in the lines. I brushed my teeth, promising myself 12 hours of sleep, telling myself the desert would wait. When I killed the light, the room sank into gray dark, neon seeping around the curtain to stripe the wall. The AC wheezed to life. I lay on the bed, still in jeans, one leg free of the covers, as if I could fool myself this wasn't a place to stay. Sleep came in fragments. I drifted, woke, drifted again. Once footsteps woke me, slow, deliberate, heel-toe on the walkway outside. The clerk's warning about the wind rang hollow. The AC gurgled. The steps stopped at my door. A shadow darkened the threshold's light. I held my breath and it sounded like a seashell's ocean. The shadow lingered a full minute before fading. The steps retreated. Half asleep, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe the Buick's driver. My thumb gripped the Pelican's handle like a lifeline. Real sleep finally took me. I woke to the clock glowing 2:58, the AC silent, the room's quiet, sharp as a blade. Something had stirred me. A hiss, like a whisper down a hall, then a hush, then a soft scrape at the door. Not a knock, but a test. My arms prickled. Someone was out there trying not to be. I eased off the bed. The carpet was too cold, the floor tilting slightly toward the door. I grabbed my camera, aiming it out of habit, framing the neon thread, the door's dark seam, my bag's glinting hinge. I set it down. Its weight felt like a betrayal. At the peephole, the corridor warped through cheap glass, bulb light hunching, walkway rail a black slash. The world haloed like a snow globe filled with heat. No one stood there, but shadows moved layered like turning pages, a shimmer that didn't belong in a desert night. "Hello," I said, my voice thin, like it had traveled too far to reach me. The hiss sharpened, closer. "If you need something, say so," I added, channeling my dad's steady tone from gas station standoffs. A shadow slid across the door's base, moving wrong, against the air's logic. I stepped back, my heel hitting the Pelican with a dull thud. The whisper stopped. Fear turns you stupid or methodical. I chose method. Step 1. TV on. It sighed to life, spitting gray snow and a moth-like hum. No channels, but I cranked the volume until the static buzzed like a swarm. Step 2. Window. The curtain barely covered the frame. Neon flickered at the edge. I pinched it shut, sliding the warm plastic rod into place. Step 3. Phone. I pressed 0. No tone. Just the TV's insects in my pulse. Then the knock came, not a tap, but a flat, heavy hand. Not asking to enter, declaring I was there. Another followed, same weight, same spot. The chain didn't rattle. I went back to the peephole, curiosity pulling me across fear's bridge. The hall was full. Not with people, but with the suggestion of them, shapes smeared by the fisheye lens, faces stretched, eyes implied rather than seen. Hands hung limp or raised as if posed for a photo, or pressed toward the door, ignoring its wood. The bulb flickered. They didn't. I blinked, and when I looked again, they'd crept closer, defying physics. The knock wasn't from one hand. It was the whole. "Wrong room," I said, my voice shaking. "Go away." The words dissolved into the peephole's curve. They whispered my name. Not in unison, but like a thought, testing throats. Ryan. Ryan. Rye. A hiss. A drag. My name from a mouth too far to sound so close. The TV buzzed harder, a line crawling its screen. The AC kicked on and the whisper slid beneath it like water under a hull. The floor tilted sharper. My stomach followed. I don't recall crossing the room, but my hands found the chain, the deadbolt, my wrist bones hollow as spoons. "You don't open things you didn't invite," my friend Mia had once said after a stranger jiggled a handle in another motel. But this door felt open already, like a mouth waiting to speak. I dragged the Pelican against it, 60 pounds of gear to hold the wood shut. I locked myself in the bathroom, the only other door. The light buzzed, bugs baked into its globe. The mirror split my face along a flaw, two halves failing to align. The whisper softened, as if respecting the smaller space. That scared me more. Whatever was out there knew restraint. The TV's hum roared through the vent like a distant rally. I sat on the toilet counting breaths like I do when shooting. In, 4, hold, 2, out, 6. The mirror watched like a security camera. A tile stain became a shape because my mind needed shapes. Step 4, daylight. Daylight was safe. Then silence fell like a switch. TV, AC, neon, all dead. The room was a blank thought. A new sound came, a wet tick on the carpet. I cracked the bathroom door. The room was dark as a void. My phone, still on airplane mode, lay on the table. I crossed to it, steps careful as if on mines. The carpet was damp near the door, not spilled, but pressed, like melted ice held against the seam. Streaks trailed inward, finger-like, smudged, ending at the Pelican's wheels. A heel shape. A palm shape. Not prints, but presence. I grabbed my phone. No signal. I killed airplane mode, but it stayed dead, searching for a tower that didn't exist. I opened the camera app, flashed the gap under the door. The light caught wet streaks, long and deliberate, like something had crawled inside. The peephole gleamed like an eye. I didn't look. The whisper returned, not pressure now, but words. Open. Stay. 6. The number hit like a stone. The clerk's voice echoed. 6. Best one. I worried about everything. The lock turned too easily, fear slicking the key. I yanked the door, banging the Pelican against my shin. The walkway was empty, the bulb above buzzing. Rooms 4 and 5 were dark. The whisper moved past me, through me, toward the stairs, like heat escaping. I didn't lock the door. Some escapes demand you leave the open behind. I dragged my bags down the stairs, the loose steps slapping. Halfway to the lot, I looked back. A figure leaned on the rail by room 6, not a person, but the shape of one, carved from neon and shadow. It waited like it knew I'd climb back up if it stood long enough. I kept moving. Motion was my prayer. The office light glowed, the ledger lay open, my name gone, the dates years old. The Polaroids curled, pins glinting. A radio murmured in the back room, too low to parse. I set the key down. It clicked like teeth. Outside, the neon died, the sky swelling around me. My car started first try, gas still a hair under a quarter. In the rear view, the motel was a silhouette. Room 6 darker than the rest. The Buick sat, ticket curling, a relic I'd noticed into existence. 7 miles later, a gas station appeared, bright, clean, real. The woman at the register said, "Long night?" in a human voice. She circled a motel on my map, said it was nice, new. I bought water and nodded, saying nothing. In a safe room later, with a door that locked and a phone that worked, I said 6 aloud. It felt like touching a stranger's ring. I've passed that exit 3 times since. By day, the motel's a husk, faded sign, cracked stucco, weeds in the seams. I've framed it in my lens, but never shot. At night, the neon sometimes flares, sometimes doesn't. I don't stop. I pull my hat low and let the road draw a new horizon. I still crash in motels, work demands it, but I don't take the best room. Never 6. I brace the door with bags, fill the silence with TV static or running water, or my own voice leaving messages for no one. Some winds sound like footsteps, some are. If you hear them in a place with thin walls and a clerk who knows your room before you speak, trust your bones. Go. The desert keeps what you offer. Don't offer yourself. If I hadn't let him buy my coffee at that truck stop, I'd still think, I've got your 6 was just a nice thing men say. I didn't know it could follow you home. My name's Jared. I'm 36, drive a used F-150 for a company that installs commercial kitchen hoods, and I'm not the kind of guy who spooks on empty highways. I log miles like other people log steps. Tallahassee to Houston to Phoenix and back again, eating from coolers, counting water towers, sleeping in parking lots when the budget turns thin. My girlfriend says I talk to the road like it's a coworker. Maybe I do. We spend a lot of nights together. This was late October, the kind of night that feels like the sky has rolled down closer to the windshield. I'd left a job site outside Tulsa at dusk, telling myself I could make Amarillo by midnight and crash cheap. The Panhandle has a way of flattening your ambition. Miles went wide and slow. By 10:30, the gas light chimed, and I told myself I'd take the next exit with real lights, not a single bulb over a pump in a dark store. 20 minutes later, I found one, wide truck stop with a dozen semis sleeping nose to tail, a diner loop attached like an afterthought, and a bright island of pumps that made the rest of the prairie look like it was painted too dark. The wind smelled like fried onions and diesel, a combination I associate with being almost safe. I topped off the tank, listening to the comforting clack of numbers climbing, then nosed into a spot near the diner, under a camera. The plan was coffee, a hot sandwich, and 30 minutes off my feet before I pushed the last 2 hours. That was it. No ghost story, no omen, just ribs of light on wet concrete and a silver moon scissored by the gantry cranes of parked trailers. Inside, the diner was warmer than the outside deserved. Plastic ferns, pie display with 3 wedges left like museum pieces, a waitress with chipped blue polish, and eyes like she'd seen everyone and held each of them carefully for a second. I slid into a booth and ordered coffee, an omelet, and toast because the menu said I could sub toast for hash browns, and I like breaking small rules. He slid into the booth opposite me without asking. Not rudely, like a man who never learned your side of things required permission. He was maybe mid-50s, lean under a brown jacket, hat with the bill curled the old way, the kind of face people describe as weathered, when they mean it has been out in the world doing something besides smiling for phones. His eyes were pale, gray or blue, hard to tell under the diner's kind light, and his hands were clean in a way that didn't match the frayed cuffs of his coat. He set a CB radio handset on the table like a talisman and nodded once. "I've got your coffee," he said to the waitress. "And his?" She didn't blink. "Sure do," she said, walking away like this was a trick they'd practiced. "I'm good," I said. "Appreciate it." "Least I can do," he replied. "You running west tonight, son?" That son slid over me the way wind slides under a door. I'm old enough to hate it and young enough to let some men have it. "Amarillo," I said. Then down. He nodded like he'd been consulted earlier. "Risky stretch," he said. "Been ugly on 40 this week. Lot of blowovers, lot of troubles. Night talk at diners around highways is like that. Half warning, half pride at still being out in it." "You a driver?" I asked, even though the CB had already said so. "Used to be," he said. "These days I ride for company." He did not say which one. His jacket had no patch, just the memory of where a patch had been. "Name's Mac." I told him mine. He rolled it around once like a mechanic testing a wheel. "Jared," he said, "I'll run behind you. Watch your 6. "I'm good," I said, because my pride likes to flex when it's tired. "I've got crews and eyes." He smiled like he'd heard that 1,000 times. "Won't cost you a thing," he said. "Ain't talking about tickets. Talking about things on the road that don't respect lines." The waitress came with coffee like a referee breaking up a fight no one knew had started. She set 2 mugs down and topped both. "You want me to add a slice of pie on that, Mac?" she asked. "Not tonight," he said. "He's got Miles." He said it like he already knew I'd say yes to the last slice of pecan if he offered. I ate the omelet and watched him in the glass of the window, where the interior lights turned the parking lot into a reflection more than a view. He didn't touch his coffee. The steam came off it steady, and he let it. He asked 2 questions that meant he knew how to keep men talking. The first about my truck, year, mileage. The second about my route. You take the business loop through Shamrock or ride the bypass? I answered because it's a relief to talk to someone who speaks the dialect of mile markers. He nodded in the right places and didn't tell any story about himself that included dates. When I finished, he slid a 20 under the check and stood. "I'll fall in behind," he said. "You'll know me." "What are you driving?" I asked. He considered for a heartbeat, then smiled small. "You'll know me," he repeated. "Keep it between the lines." Outside, the wind had gone up half a notch. It pushed my jacket tight against my ribs. I loaded the empty coffee cup feeling into my chest, warm, false courage, and told myself I'd roll out, let him pull ahead, and wave him off with a courtesy flash. I didn't know anyone my taillights. I wanted Amarillo and cheap sheets. I merged back onto 40 under those tall green signs that look like they could take off if you loosened the bolts. The road opened into the kind of night where distance is measured in ovals of light linked together. 10 minutes out, my mirrors filled with an old Kenworth, square nose, tall stacks, amber marker lights running its brow like a string of worry beads. No company logo on the door, no DOT numbers. The paint was the deep red long-haul rigs wore in a younger America. It sat 2 lengths back, polite, steady. "Breaker, breaker," a voice said through my speakers even though my radio was off. I looked down on instinct. My phone sat face down in the cup holder. The truck's voice filled the cabin anyway. Not loud, but intimate, like someone turning up in a bench seat. "You're good on your right, Jared. Hold it steady." "Mac," I said out loud, then laughed because talking hands-free to a ghost is how you end up telling yourself stories later. I checked the right side anyway. A low sedan had drifted into my dark spot, no lights on. I corrected a hair, gave them room, watched them slide past with their driver lit by a screen. If Mac hadn't said anything, would I have noticed? Maybe. Maybe later. We ran like that for 20 miles, me at a sane 71, the Kenworth 2 lengths behind like it was teaching me patience. When a gust kicked at the truck, I felt it first in my own lane as a twitch, then watched his marker lights shimmy and settle. 10-4, he said to no one, which is CB for I'm awake, and I heard the thing the world just said. Tiredness went weird. It made the radio voice feel like a friend you can hand a mile to. He kept it simple. Left lane open in 2. Trailer ahead with a bad sway. Give him extra room. Watch your dip past the county line. Pothole eats tires. He never told me facts anyone couldn't know. He told me them before I knew them. Each time I checked, the world proved him right. At the 30-mile mark, my speed dropped on its own. A line of hazard flashers clogged the shoulder. 2 cars nose-kissed in the grass. A deputy's cruiser angled to keep hope from hitting steel. We slid by at a respectful crawl. In the blaze of blue and amber, I caught faces, hands to hair, one man bending to gather papers blown flat to the cattails. The wind stole the siren's voice and left the lights to do the talking. "Keep moving," Mac said, soft. "They've got it." The road opened again. Traffic thinned to an occasional pair of eyes. The prairie did that thing where it suggests it could be ocean if it wanted. The interstate's rise and fall lulled. I told myself I'd give him a wave at the next exit and peel off. I didn't like that the voice made me feel like I didn't have to check my mirror, even as it told me to check my mirror. "Coming up on County 73, he said, "there's a crosswind where the land dips. It'll push you right into the rumble if you're loose. Thumb and forefinger on the wheel. Let it move under you." I did what he said because that's the language I understand. Directions you can hang your body on. The wind hit exactly where he said it would. It made a low sound across the hood like breath under a door. I wrote it. The F-150 swam, and then straightened like a fish returning to the center of a current. In the mirror, his lights never wavered. He'd bought my coffee. He was keeping his word. It should have been enough to make me relax. Instead, a little voice bred of too many crime podcasts woke up and started asking practical questions. What rig? What plate? What company? Why no chrome on the bumper where all the other old rigs had it? The mud flaps bore no name, no pinup, no bull. Clean black. Clean is the wrong word for a truck that has eaten America one county at a time. Clean suggested absence rather than effort. "Where you peel off?" he asked. I hadn't keyed anything. I hadn't connected anything. The radio worked on his will. "Amarillo," I said before I could edit. "Exit 33. "Copy that. There's a washout in the right lane before 33. Stay left of the crown." His voice thinned like the wind tried to unthread it. "I'll run you to the ramp." 20 minutes later, the ramp rose like the promise of lights. I eased into the left, checked my mirror for courtesy, and saw nothing. The old Kenworth was gone. I blinked. Men don't vanish 100 yards behind you when you're running steady on a straight West Texas highway. They don't floor it and pass without you noticing either. I slowed, craning for a pair of amber markers, a red glow, anything. The ramp approached. The prairie did not offer answers. The radio sat wordless in my silent cab. At the top of the exit, I pulled to the shoulder and stepped out into the cold to give the night a chance to explain itself. It didn't. The highway hummed like it always does. A semi roared by in the distance, new model aero cab, company logo, bright enough to accuse me of being ridiculous. I got back in. I told myself I'd dreamed a driver because a man alone will assemble a voice from hunger if he's had sleep knocked out of him by distance. I checked into a motel with a lobby that smelled like lemons and drag-mopped water, threw the safety bar out on habit, and slept like poured concrete. At 5 a.m., the phone on the nightstand rang. It wasn't my cell, it was the motel landline, the kind of phone that still has a card under the plastic with extension numbers printed in small type. The sound of it ripped me up and out of sleep in one move. I managed a rough, "Yeah." Static. Then a voice, thin and clean as if it had traveled a long way through wire to reach me. "You drifted on the ramp," it said, kind and precise. "Hold it tighter this morning. Lot of folks tired at dawn." "Mac," I said, because the deep part of you uses names before it questions if names have a right to exist. "See you at the stop," he said. "Which stop?" I asked, but the line had already gone to a quiet that felt like a room after someone leaves. I dressed in the fast, inelegant way of men who slept too hard and don't want to admit they were deeper than they should have been. I got coffee in a lobby cup that said, "Have a nice day," in a font that could not make anything true. The sky had gone gray-pink. I got back on 40 because that's what I had promised myself in the dark. The radio in my cab was still off. My phone had 2 bars and a stubborn approach to music. I didn't force it. At the pilot 20 miles out, I turned in on a whim that wasn't a whim. I told myself I needed windshield fluid and a donut with shame sugar. The lot was full of early trucks and men in hoodies crossed with reflective vests. I parked. I looked for a square-nosed red Kenworth because if he hadn't existed, I wanted the proof of absence. 3 old rigs sat along the fence. One was blue with a flame paint job. One was white with a chrome visor that could scalp a low cloud. One was red. I walked slowly because theater requires it. The red rig's paint was the right depth of blood. Its stacks had the right stance. Its brow wore the right amount of small lights. It had a company name in gold script on the door. River and Sun Freight, a place I'd never heard of. Below it, ghost letters showed where another name had once been and been taken off. The DOT numbers were on the fender in flaking vinyl. A paper log sat on the dash, folded open to a page with neat block letters. I stood there until a man in a ball cap walked up behind me and said, "You need something?" "I met a driver last night," I said, sounding like a guy who had convinced himself of something and now needed a witness. "Red Kenworth, runs behind like a shadow. Every 3rd rig out here is a Red Kenny," he said, amused. "We're like cattle. We all look the same in the dark." "His name's Mac," I said, mid-50s, lean, jacket with no patch. The driver's face did a small thing. "You pulling my leg?" "No." He jerked his chin at the truck. "Ask. That's River. He's inside. He's got stories." I found River at the coffee urn by the register, filling 2 cups like he had hands for 4. He noticed me noticing him and flicked his eyes up in that quick, safe way men do. "How you?" he said. I described Mac in 4 sentences, left out the part where the radio worked without power, mentioned the 40 miles from the diner and the way he'd called out hazards a minute before they existed. River's mouth pressed into a line that said he'd decided something and didn't like that decision much. He set one of the cups down on the counter for a second, then picked it back up like he didn't trust the counter not to steal it. "You don't need to be telling that before sunup," he said, "but since you told it, I'll tell you this. My old man was Mac, died 8 years back, taught me to run at night, taught me to say I've got your 6 and mean it. He did an exit, like you described outside Shamrock once." Took it too hot, caught a gust, rolled. Walked away from it 'cause the ditch was sand. Put the fear in him, though. After that, he rode behind boys on bad nights if they'd let him. Folks say he still does. He said it like a man too practical for ghosts would say the word anyway, because it was easier than the longer explanation that would break something he needed for the day. I talked to him, I said, and the sentence felt like I was testifying and wanted my voice to pass as evidence. River shrugged into his jacket. Maybe you did, he said, or maybe all that old coffee at Bell's Diner is finally speaking. Either way, if he told you to hold it tight on ramps, you should. On the way back to my truck, I passed a newsprint bulletin board between the two bathrooms, notices about lost dogs, a church potluck, a flyer for a driver who'd gone missing last month, family asking for word. A Polaroid was thumbtacked, crooked among the papers, men in front of a square-nosed rig, arms around each other, the light behind them too bright for the faces to be clear. One man in a brown jacket had a hat with the bill curled the old way. Someone had written MAC and the boys in Sharpie. The edges had gone soft with time. I drove on because that's the only thing that makes night stories reset. It should have ended there, with a good yarn, a decent coffee, the road resuming its job of carrying me and my excuses. But in the next week, little things kept happening. Twice, on 287, a voice I didn't own told me quietly to slow 10 beats before a deer punched the ditch grass ahead. Once, pulling into a rest area near Childress, my phone lit with a call from unknown. The screen showed the green bar climbing, and when I answered, the sound was like a CB squelch opening and closing and a single sentence slid through. Lots slick. Left lanes cleaner. The air on my arms lifted in rows, and I found the left lane was a line of dry that the right didn't offer. You can live with help you don't understand. You can take it and pretend it was yours. What I couldn't live with was the way it followed me home. Coming in on 10 at 2 in the morning, the highway broad and honest, the kind of dry Florida air that sounds like quiet applause on your windshield. I glanced at my mirror, and there he was again, square nose, amber beads, steady as a pulse. Not too close, never too impatient, just the distance that says I'm here if you need me to be. I turned off into town, and he didn't. That should have been a relief. 2 streets from my apartment at the four-way with the flickering streetlight where a kid on a bike once cut me off in daylight, and we both apologized, like it mattered. A voice in my cab said, "Stop. Not brake. Stop." I planted my foot. A black SUV ran the sign where mine would have run, the driver lit by a phone. He never looked. He never knew. I didn't move until a second voice, the one in my own head that sounds like people I love, said go. When I parked behind my building, I sat there long enough for the engine to tick its cooling. In the rear view, the alley was only an alley. No amber, no blood paint, no man with a bill-curved hat. But when I got out and closed the door, I caught the scent of diesel, faint and uninvited, and the air around the truck felt warmer in a strip where another vehicle might have idled. I don't tell this at bars. Men will take your story and make it theirs. Then you're left with the hollow that comes after you let go of something too soon. But I'll tell you this much. I don't let pride set my speed anymore. I don't ignore it when the hair on my arm rises at the county line. When a gust takes me near the crown of an exit, I hold the wheel with thumb and forefinger and let the road move under me like a current I respect. If I hear a voice that's not mine, say, left lane open in 2, I change lanes if it's safe, and I check. And I say thanks out loud because courtesy never made a bad night worse. Sometimes on the long straight flats, where the line between earth and sky is a rumor, I tap the brakes twice quick the way drivers do to say thank you for a flash. It's stupid, sure. It's a ritual I didn't ask for. But on some nights, in the mirror, I swear I see twin amber beads blink once in return before the dark takes them. And I think about a man whose last lesson was that the wind can take you where you don't mean to go, and how he decided he'd ride behind boys on bad nights if they'd let him. I don't know what rides behind me. I just know I let him. I've got his coffee if he wants it next time. He's got my 6. If I hadn't tapped the brakes on that bridge, I'd still think hitchhikers are just people with bad luck. Now I know some of them are looking for something you can't give back. My name's Layla. I'm 27, a grad student who pays rent by driving cars cross-country for a vintage brokerage and taking photos of them for their site. That night, I was behind the wheel of a '98 Land Cruiser, pushing through rain toward Spokane. The sensible thing would have been to stop at a motel, but I thought I could beat the storm. That's how I ended up alone on an old steel bridge, rain hammering, wipers slapping, black water rolling below. That's when I saw him, a man on the narrow walkway, hood up, one hand raised. He wasn't reckless. He stayed against the rail, but his palm flashed pale in my headlights. I told myself to keep driving. Instead, I tapped the brakes. The Land Cruiser fishtailed slightly. My stomach clenched, but I stopped. I cracked the window, letting in cold, wet air. "You okay?" I called. "Need a ride?" "Just to the other side," he said. His voice sounded careful, like it hadn't been used in a while. Up close, he looked mid-30s, worn black coat, hands raw at the knuckles. He carried no bag. His eyes caught the dash. Glow. Gray, maybe green. "That will do," he said when I offered a lift to the tolls. My gut told me no. Empathy told me yes. I unlocked the door. He slid in neatly, buckled without prompting, and shut the rain out with him. He didn't drip, and I noticed, though I tried not to. "I'm Layla," I said, because names make things normal. "Nathan," he answered softly, turning his gaze to the river. "It's worse in the middle." The bridge groaned in the wind. "You from around here?" I asked. "From across." Back and forth. The way he repeated it unsettled me. His eyes flicked toward a makeshift shrine on the railing, flowers in a jar, photo of a grinning boy. He didn't need to explain. I knew what it meant. "People leave them," he murmured. "Others take them. They come back." We drove deeper into the ribs of the bridge, steel flashing overhead, shadows and light repeating like a metronome. My hands tightened on the wheel. He leaned forward slightly, just enough to make my pulse rise. "Could we stop in the middle?" he asked, to hear it, louder at the seam. A sign ahead warned, "No stopping on bridge." Wind shoved at the Land Cruiser, nudging us toward the rail. Every nerve screamed no. "Why?" I asked carefully. "To hear," he repeated. "Different answers for different drivers. I thought yours might be honest." The way he said it made my chest tighten. I pushed the accelerator gently. "I'll drop you at the tolls," I said. "There's shelter there." Silence stretched, the bridge's groan filling it. Then he lifted his palm against the passenger window. No moisture smeared the glass, but something pressed there. A faint shape, not quite hand, not quite leaf. My mouth went dry. "Thank you for the ride," he said at last. He unbuckled, opened the door, stepped out, and vanished. The dome light never flicked. The seat never sagged. One heartbeat he was there, the next he wasn't. The passenger floor mat was dry. Shock carried me the rest of the way across. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles ached, headlights tunneling into the rain, waiting for a voice beside me that never came. At the toll booths, no attendants waited, just darkness. A phone booth hunched in the drizzle. I pressed on, unwilling to stop again. 12 miles later, I pulled under the lights of a gas station, the first solid ground since the bridge. I stepped out, breathing diesel and wet pavement. A sheriff's SUV idled 2 pumps over. Normal people walked in and out, groceries under jackets. I went inside, shaky hands clutching a coffee. "You hear they shut the west span?" the clerk asked, nodding at the storm. Her blonde hair was tied up in a scrunchie, her tone casual. Scanner said another jumper earlier, guy in a black coat. My stomach flipped. "Did they get him?" She shrugged. "They just say, 'located.' Happens a lot. My cousin says on bad nights you can hear the river louder, like it's talking." She scanned my candy bar. "You on a road trip?" "Work?" I muttered. "Delivering cars." She handed back my card. "Be careful. Ice collects at the seam." That word again, seam. My hands trembled around the cup. I left without another word. Outside, under the canopy, a hooded man leaned against a trash can. My chest seized, but when he pushed his hood back, he was just a stranger, lighting a cigarette, laughing when the wind fought him. Flesh and blood. The relief almost hurt. Back in the Land Cruiser, the passenger seat was empty, but tiny dark specks marked the vinyl. Not water, not dirt. Arranged faintly, like fingers had once rested there. I stared until the rain swallowed the shapes. The next morning, I delivered the truck. The buyer smiled, complimented the smooth drive. "Heard they shut the bridge," he said casually. "Recovery operation. Sorry if you were delayed." "Wasn't delayed," I said quietly. "Got escorted." He chuckled like it was a joke. I didn't correct him. 2 weeks later at home, I reviewed the dashcam footage. At the timestamp, the figure appeared on the walkway, hand raised. The car slowed, but the passenger door never opened. The seat beside me stayed empty. At the bridge's midpoint, rain blurred the lens. When it cleared, a faint shape pressed from inside the glass, wordless, unnatural, then nothing. I closed the laptop, heart racing. Later, curiosity made me reopen it. Same result. Passenger side untouched, always empty. The screenshot I took showed only rain and girders, no man, no raised hand. Different answers for different drivers. That phrase echoed in my head. I don't stop for hitchhikers anymore. That's the rule now. Not because I don't care, but because I do. Too much. The next driver might not. And if someone waits at the seam, raising a hand, I'll raise mine too as a confession. I see you, but I won't stop. And when the river's roar grows louder, climbing the canyon like a voice, I don't listen too closely. Because I'm not afraid of falling. I'm afraid of answering. Thanks for riding along through these road trip horror stories. If you enjoyed the journey, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more true horror tales every week. And before you go, drop a comment below. Tell me, which story haunted you the most? And what would you have done differently on the road that night? I'll be reading your stories in the comment.